The rain turned the city into a blur of gray and gold, streetlights reflecting off puddles like scattered stars. 33-year-old Donovan clutched his 3-year-old daughter Iris closer, her tiny arms wrapped around his neck as they hurried across the old Riverside Bridge. His worn jacket barely kept her dry, but he didn't mind. Keeping her safe was all that mattered. Then he saw her. A young woman stood at the bridge railing, one leg already over the edge, her soaked dress clinging to her trembling frame. The wind whipped her dark hair across her face as she stared down at the churning water below. Donovan's heart stopped. Without thinking, he quickened his pace. "Don't," he called out softly, his voice barely audible over the rain. "Please, don't jump." She turned, mascara-streaked tears mixing with raindrops on her cheeks. Her eyes were hollow, distant, the eyes of someone who'd already said goodbye. "You don't understand," she whispered, her knuckles white against the cold metal. "There's nothing left for me here." Donovan stopped a few feet away, holding Iris protectively. "I don't know your story," he said quietly, his voice cracking with emotion. "But I know that somewhere, someone is praying you'll come home tonight. Someone whose world will shatter if you let go." The woman's lips trembled. "No one cares. No one even sees me anymore." "I see you," Donovan said, taking one careful step closer. "My daughter sees you, and right now, in this moment, you matter to us." Something in his words broke through. Her grip on the railing loosened slightly. Donovan gently set Iris down, whispered for her to stay back, then slowly extended his hand toward the stranger. "Please, let me help you back over. Whatever you're running from, it doesn't have to end here. Not tonight, not like this." For a long moment, she stared at his outstretched hand, calloused, worn, honest. Then, with a sob that seemed to tear from her very soul, she reached for him. He pulled her back over the railing, and she collapsed against him, weeping uncontrollably. Iris toddled forward and wrapped her small arms around the woman's leg, her innocent gesture of comfort breaking something inside the stranger. "Thank you," she gasped between sobs. "Thank you." Donovan helped her to a nearby bench under the bridge's overhang, shielding them slightly from the downpour. "I'm Donovan. This is Iris. What's your name?" "Adrian," she whispered, wiping her eyes with shaking hands. They sat in silence as the rain continued its relentless symphony. Finally, Adrian spoke, her voice raw and broken. "My mother died 6 months ago. Heart attack. I was on a book tour. I didn't even get to say goodbye." She stared at her hands. "My father, he's all I have left, but he's become someone I don't recognize anymore. Cold, distant. He blames me for not being there when she needed us." Donovan listened, his own heart aching with recognition. "I lost my wife 2 years ago. Gas leak in our house while I was at work. I came home to sirens and yellow tape." His voice caught. "Iris was at my mother's that night. That's the only reason she's still here. The only reason I'm still here." Adrian looked at him with new understanding. How do you keep going?" Donovan glanced at Iris, who was playing with a small pebble, humming softly to herself. She needed me to survive, so I learned to breathe again. Some days are still impossible. Some nights I can't sleep because I see my wife's face everywhere. But Iris, she reminds me that love doesn't end with death. It just changes shape. Over the next hour, they talked. Adrian revealed she was an author who'd published 3 novels, each one praised by critics, but never truly seen by her father, Harrison Caldwell, CEO of Caldwell Global Enterprises. Since her mother's death, he'd thrown himself into work, leaving Adrian alone in their massive estate, drowning in grief and isolation. "He used to read every word I wrote," she said softly. "My mother would make him sit down, and he'd listen to chapters before bed. But now he just asks about sales numbers and market performance. Like my words don't matter anymore. Like I don't matter." Donovan nodded slowly. Grief makes people do strange things. It made me sell our house because I couldn't walk past her empty chair. It made me take 2 jobs just to stay busy not to think." He paused. "But it also taught me that the people we lose, they'd want us to live, really live, not just survive." Something shifted in Adrian's expression, a flicker of light returning to those hollow eyes. "Come on," Donovan said, standing and offering his hand again. "It's freezing out here. My apartment is small, but it's warm. Let me make you some tea, let you dry off." Adrian hesitated, then nodded. His apartment was indeed small, a 1-bedroom with faded furniture and walls covered in Iris's colorful crayon drawings. But it was clean, filled with the gentle chaos of a child's love. Donovan made chamomile tea while Iris showed Iris her favorite stuffed rabbit. As Adrian sips the warm drink wrapped in Donovan's only spare blanket, she noticed a framed photo on the shelf, a beautiful woman with kind eyes holding a newborn Iris. "That's Celeste," Donovan said quietly, following her gaze. "She was everything good in this world." "She was beautiful," Adrian whispered. "She was. But more than that, she was kind. She volunteered at soup kitchens, fostered rescue dogs, never passed a homeless person without stopping." He smiled sadly. "She taught me that kindness costs nothing, but means everything, especially to people standing on bridges in the rain." Adrian's eyes filled with fresh tears. "I don't even know you. Why did you stop for me?" "Because someone stopped for me once," Donovan said simply. 3 months after Celeste died, I was standing in my garage with the car running and the door closed. My neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Parker, knocked on the garage door. She said she smelled exhaust, said she needed help reaching something on her top shelf. It was a lie, of course, but it saved my life." He looked at Iris, sleeping peacefully on the couch. Sometimes we're meant to be someone's Mrs. Parker. The next morning, Adrian borrowed Donovan's phone to make a call. When a black luxury car arrived an hour later, an elderly man stepped out, impeccably dressed, his face carved with grief and worry. Harrison Caldwell looked 10 years older than his 68 as he crushed his daughter in an embrace, his shoulders shaking with sobs. "I'm sorry," he kept repeating. "I'm so sorry, Addie. I was so lost without your mother. I forgot I still had you. I forgot to tell you every single day how much I love you, how proud I am of you." Watching them, Donovan felt his own tears fall. Before leaving, Harrison turned to Donovan, his voice thick with emotion. "You gave me back my daughter. How can I ever—" "You can't," Donovan interrupted gently, "and you don't need to. Just be there for her. Really be there. That's all any of us can do for the people we love." But Harrison insisted on exchanging numbers, on staying in touch. Weeks became months. Adrian visited often, bringing books for Iris, sitting for long conversations with Donovan. She'd started therapy, reconnected with her father, begun writing again, this time stories about hope and second chances. Harrison, transformed by nearly losing his daughter, established a mental health foundation in his late wife's name. He offered Donovan a position as community outreach coordinator, stable hours, good benefits, the ability to spend more time with Iris. One evening, as Adrian and Donovan watched Iris play in the park, she turned to him with a soft smile. "Do you remember what you said on the bridge? That you mattered to me, even though you didn't know me?" Donovan nodded. "You were the first person in months who saw me as a human being, not just a grieving daughter or a disappointing investment. You reminded me that my life had value, not because of what I could produce or achieve, but simply because I existed." She squeezed his hand. "You saved my life, Donovan, not just that night, every day since." He shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just held the door open." Years passed. Adrian published a memoir about loss, hope, and the stranger who pulled her back from the edge. It became a bestseller, touching millions. She donated all proceeds to suicide prevention programs.
On the 5th anniversary of that rainy night, Adrian, Harrison, Donovan, and 8-year-old Iris stood together on the riverside bridge. A small bronze plaque had been installed on the railing. You matter. You are seen. You are loved. If you're in crisis, please call the number below. Iris read the words carefully, then looked up at the adults. Daddy, is this where you met Aunt Addie? Donovan knelt beside his daughter, his voice gentle. Yes, sweetheart, this is where I learned that the smallest act of kindness can change everything. Where I learned that reaching out to someone in pain doesn't require money or power or anything special. Just courage, just compassion, just caring enough to say, you matter to me. Adrian added softly, her hand on Iris's shoulder. And where I learned that even in our darkest moments, there's always someone who cares. We just have to hold on long enough to find them. Harrison, his voice gruff with emotion, placed a hand on Donovan's shoulder. This man reminded me that wealth means nothing if we forget to be human. That the greatest legacy we can leave isn't measured in money, but in the lives we touch with simple kindness. As they stood together, rain beginning to fall once more, Donovan thought of Celeste, of Mrs. Parker, of all the ordinary people who'd shown him extraordinary grace. The truth was beautifully simple. We save each other. Not with grand gestures or heroic acts, but with quiet compassion, extended hands, and the courage to stop and care when someone is drowning. The moral whispered through the rain. Kindness doesn't ask for credentials or bank statements before offering help. It simply sees suffering and responds with humanity. That night on the bridge, a struggling single father with nothing but an open heart and a sleeping child taught a millionaire's daughter the most valuable lesson. Your worth isn't determined by what you have, but by who you choose to be when someone needs you most. Adrian leaned close to Donovan and whispered, echoing his words from that fateful night, "Thank you for seeing me." He smiled, tears mixing with rain. "Thank you for letting me." If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.